Today we're going to practice how to find the rate of change when looking at a table. The rate of change is the change in y over the change in x. So while we look at the table, we can use any pairs of numbers that are next to each other on the y side to find how y changes, and any pairs of numbers that are next to each other on the x side to find how x changes. So for example, on this table, I want to start with my change in y, and I can use 4 and 7. I can use 7 and 10. I can use 10 and 13. Because this is a linear equation, they should all be the same. So for this, I'm going to use 4 and 7. Now you might be able to look at this and say, oh, I know, 4 plus 3 equals 7. So this is going up by 3. If you're not sure, you can always work backwards and do subtraction. So I can do 7 minus 4, and I get 3. Now that's a positive 3, so that's why I wrote plus 3. This should work for the other pairs as well. I have to be able to do 7 plus 3 and get 10, which is my next number on the table. If I didn't know, I can use any pair and work backwards and subtract. So I can do 13 minus 10, and I get 3. So every time I am adding 3 to my y's. I'm going to use the same process to figure out the change in x. Again, I can use any pair that I want to figure out how it's going from the beginning of the table to the next number. So I'm going to start with 0 to 1. I look at that and I say, oh, I'm adding 1. I'm going up by 1 each time. If I didn't know, I can work backwards and do subtraction. 1 minus 0 equals 1. That's a positive 1, which means I'm adding 1. That should be true every time. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. So now that we've figured out how it is changing each time, I can use that information to write my rate of change. We're going to write our rate of change like a fraction. The numerator, the top number of our fraction, is the change in y. Y is going up by 3 every time, so a positive 3 is going to be my rate of change. The denominator, or the bottom number, is my change in x. Every time my x is going up by 1. So that means my rate of change is 3 over 1. Now we can do the same for the next table. The difference in this table, though, is that when I look at my y's, as the x's are getting bigger, my y's are getting smaller. That's the opposite of what was happening on our first table. As my x's got bigger, my y's also got bigger. So that was a positive rate of change. But on this table, my x's are getting bigger, but my y's are getting smaller, which tells me my rate of change is going to be negative. So I'm going to use the same process, find how my y's are changing. Again, I can use any pair I want to, so I'm going to use 11 and 9. You might not know what's happening right away, so we can work backwards and we can subtract. So I can do 9 minus 11. That gets me negative 2. That negative sign is important because that tells me I have to subtract to go from one number to the other. That should be true of every single one on here. 15 minus 2 equals 13. That works. 13 minus 2 equals 11. That works also. Now I'm going to go find my change in x's. This is just the same as our other one. We are going up by 1 every time. 0 plus 1 is 1. 1 plus 1 is 2. 2 plus 1 is 3. So just like before, I'm going to write my rate of change as a fraction. the number that shows how y changes. In this case, it was minus 2, so I'm going to write a negative 2. And then on the bottom, the denominator, is the number that shows me how much x changes, which was 1. So our rate of change is negative 2 over 1.